Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the EFL Fantasy Podcast. My name is Angus,
My name is Dan.
and we're here to review the game week 31 action. We're into the final stretch, we're into the final set of boosts, which means sort of everything is moving towards the end. Obviously, it's still only sort of February, but sort of feels like we're getting towards the end now. Things are going to be decided in this stretch. Um, but first things first, Dan, how are you?
Not great. Obviously, lost the big one in the Premier League, deservedly so. So that was a bit annoying, but typical Luton, to be honest. Uh, Gaffr wise, another red arrow. So yeah, it's it's not been great, to be honest. But it's been a good day for you anyway, Angus.
Yeah, obviously Arsenal had a very convincing win, um, which has helped things, particularly putting a bit of gloss on what is otherwise a red arrow in Gaffer is the other thing to reflect on. But yeah, in terms of getting into that, I'll just sort of jump into that. I got 69 points this week, which was a nice score, obviously. But I got three from Hazard, four from Giles, one from Walker Peters, four from Davis, a captain Somerville, which was the one sort of bright spot really, for 36. Carvalho 2, Philogene 2, Dewsbury Hall 2, Rutter 8, vice captain Adam Armstrong for 3, Whitaker 4. And my last decision with my team in terms of who to bench led me to benching Ricardo Pereira for 13 points. So that was the real sort of pain there. But given that I benched him and didn't have Smodix or Clark, it was only a small red error, I think, of 11 places. And I was worried with those players returning that it was going to be a bit more significant. So I guess that's the other sort of bright spot for me this week. Dan, how did you go this week?
So another red arrow. I'm down to 232. I took a -4. I got 71 -4. Um, a couple of transfers. I brought Giles and Philogene in for Vestergaard, who didn't play, and Dan James, who also didn't play. It's a shame that Hull didn't play either, so they didn't score me too many points. But Johansson 2, Giles 4, Walker Peters 1, Davis 4, Captain Somerville for 36, Carvalho 2, Philogene 2, Dewsbury Hall 2. I do have Sammy Smodix for 7, Rutter 8, and Vice Captain Adam Armstrong. Um, I do have Famewu with a 6 on the bench, but I was never going to play him. He's right at the bottom. So, yeah, disappointing red arrow, but obviously still building towards the double game week in 33.
Yeah, and shout out to anyone who did play, who did start Fame Wu. I think he went off in the 76th minute, where obviously you need to play 75 to get the second half clean sheet. So perfectly timed substitution there. Um, but yeah, so obviously a little bit of a down week. I guess the upside is quick turnaround to midweek games and everything. So we'll move swiftly on as a result. So next thing we have up is the team news from this weekend. So Dan, I'll hand over to you for that.
Yeah, so just the main team news for fantasy related players. For Sheffield Wednesday, I've put Paveda and Cadamartri were in. I thought Sheffield Wednesday looked pretty decent on Friday night, especially Paveda. As you mentioned, Famu went off injured, so keep an eye on that. Ipswich, Broadhead, and Kiefer Moore were in. West Brom, Vyman was in for Swift. Leicester, Vestergaard was out. Dennis Pratt was in for Mavididi. Um, Sunderland, Roberts and Rushlin was in for Cardiff. Turnbull started. Leeds, James still not in the squad. so Nonto continued in his place. Blackburn, they played 3-5-2. Rankin Costello was playing centre mid. Um, Dolan and Smodics were behind Gallagher. Both got returns. QPR, Dykes was dropped. Hodge played the 10 position, and Armstrong was up front. For Norwich, Bro was on the bench. Um, Nunes played, and Sarah dropped deep. Sarah dropped deeper. For Borough, Dieng was on the bench. I thought he would go straight in, but he didn't. I've still got him. Brian O'Brien played. For Southampton, Rothwell and Brooks came on. I think Rothwell came on in the first half and Brooks came on at half time, and they basically changed the game for Southampton. So that's one to keep an eye on. And that was basically it.
Cool. So yeah, a lot of interesting details there. I do think on Dieng there was some uncertainty about whether he would be in the squad. So I do wonder
Yeah.
sort of whether in the next game or two he does come back into the team. I think Glover's had a couple of sort of less good games recently or less good moments. So I think that may well sort of that change in particular may happen quite quickly. But yeah, so we're going to get into a couple of sort of key points now. And I'm going to kick us off, which is talking just a little bit about sort of the teams in and around sort of relegation. I just thought, sort of taking stock on what we can learn about the teams, particularly when we're then looking at how it impacts sort of in Gaffr, who you target with what, etc. Um, so I've included the bottom 10 because I drew the line at Plymouth. There's a little gap above Plymouth and Swansea and Blackburn, all on 36. So they're in this conversation. I think the next team above them is on 40, but I just thought they still had to be considered part of it. So it's Plymouth, Swansea, and Blackburn are on 36. Worth noting with that, Swansea have played 31, Plymouth and Blackburn have both played 30. Then there's another sort of little group, which is Millwall, 33 points from 31 games. Birmingham, 32 points from 30 games. Stoke, 32 points from 31 games. And Huddersfield, 31 points from 31 games. And then you've got the bottom three, QPR, 29 points from 31 games. Sheffield Wednesday, 26 points from 31 games. And Rotherham, down at the bottom, 19 points from 30 games. So that's sort of the teams, and it's just little bits that I just wanted to look at with them. So one of the things for me was about just some of these simple sort of goals scored and goals against. So the top scorers in those teams won't be a surprise to anyone. Plymouth with 49 and then Blackburn with 45. I think if you sort of went through that list of teams, those would be the two that you would expect to be at the top of that. So I think particularly when you're looking at some of these worst teams in terms of Gaffer wise, like I think there you're like, do I really want to play a defender against them, for example? Depending on sort of whether, particularly with some of the fullbacks with the potential going the other way, you might want to, but it just sort of, if that factors in. Then you've got Swansea actually on 40, which did surprise me a little bit. Huddersfield on 36, Birmingham on 34, Millwall on 31, Stoke and QPR on only 29, Rotherham on 25, and you add like 5 to 10 goals to this team, and I think they would probably be higher up the table. Sheffield Wednesday on 24. Now, we've spoken about their issues before with goal scoring. Obviously, they got a couple at the weekend or on Friday night from Ugbo, who's a new arrival, and maybe that's the sort of thing that helps them sort it. But I think if we want to understand particularly why they are down there, that number sort of screams out. Anything just in terms of those goals scored numbers that sort of seems noteworthy to you?
Stoke, like I know they've not been doing great. I'm surprised they haven't scored more than that. It
Yeah,
felt like at the start of the season they were scoring quite a few goals. It's obviously dried up pretty badly, I'd say. Um, as you mentioned, Plymouth and Blackburn will score goals. To be honest, I'll be surprised if those top three you mentioned would get
yeah,
down, get relegated at this point. Obviously, a big win for Blackburn over Stoke this weekend. Um, Huddersfield, that's quite a lot of goals, considering I don't really associate them having a striker. So I know um, they've they've been scoring quite a lot the last few weeks. So I think it's probably seven in the last two
yeah,
games, so that helps out. But yeah, yeah, I think that's interesting.
yeah. I mean, I think as well the other thing, I'm just double checking with them because I know at least before this weekend their top goal scorer was Mikael Helik, which probably sums it all up, and he's still their top scorer. Now he's doing well with 8 goals, but when a centre back is your top scorer, it's sort of like this. That's why we sort of would expect you to not have that many goals.
I think it's interesting with Huddersfield that Sorba Thomas has started to play well in the last 6 games. He's got 2 goals and 4 assists. Um, and if he keeps that up, they'd probably climb the table, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think so. The other end, which with a lot of these teams will explain why they're there. Goals conceded. Of those teams, interestingly, surprisingly, because I thought QPR would be the best for goals conceded in this group, it's actually Millwall. Now, we've sort of said Millwall haven't been as good defensively as we expected and everything, but they've conceded 40 goals so far this season, which in 31 games, that's not bad. Um, then you've got QPR on 43, Stoke on 45, Birmingham 47, Swansea 48, Sheffield Wednesday and Plymouth 50, Huddersfield 52, which gets into the issue of them, Blackburn 56, and Rotherham 57. So obviously with Blackburn, we know that's why they're where they are because they're clearly very capable going forward. But we've spoken all season about their goals, the number of goals they've conceded. Um, but yeah, I was a little bit surprised. I guess I was also slightly surprised. I guess that Stoke were doing all right, but I guess there was a thing at one point of their fans trying to talk up Bonham because they had like the most clean sheets in the league or something. So maybe that it goes some way to explaining it. Um, but yeah, so obviously you've got sort of 5 of those 10 have conceded 50 or more goals this season, which obviously suggests that they've had some issues at the back. But anything in particular you take from those numbers?
I think it's quite encouraging for QPR, I'd say. Um, I think going forward, they're starting to improve, especially if they can get Chair, Willock, um, and Armstrong playing together. I think they'll score goals, and if they're not conceding quite as many, I know they conceded 2 this week, but if they can start limiting it down to maybe only one a game for the rest of the season, they've got a big chance of staying up, I think.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it bodes well for them. I've got a couple of sort of the underlying numbers just to sort of look at it and get an idea of how sustainable this is for some of these teams. So in terms of their XG across the season, the highest is Blackburn with 44.6, which interestingly they are basically that's 45 goals on 44.6 XG this season for Blackburn, which shows that they are legitimately a decent goal scoring team as well. Then it's Plymouth on 39.1, but a little bit of a gap there. Swansea 38.6. I would not have said Swansea had basically the same XG. Would have expected Swansea to have basically the same XG as Plymouth. Stoke 35.8. You get down to Birmingham 33.7, Huddersfield 32.6, Millwall 32.3, Sheffield Wednesday 32.1. A little bit of a drop off to QPR at 27.2, and then Rotherham at 19.7.
They're even overachieving it by 6 as well, Rotherham.
Yeah,
I feel bad for Rotherham because I thought they done quite well last year, but they've just not been able to build on their team really.
no,
Um,
no, it's been tough for them. I agree. I'm not surprised with QPR, for example, they're being low as well. We know that that's the end of the pitch that's been the issue for them as well.
I think that's more so under Ainsworth. I
Yeah,
think since I can't remember that is it Cifuentes?
yeah,
Since he's come in, I think they're probably at result wise, they're probably a mid-table side. Them and Sheffield Wednesday, to be honest.
yeah. Although I think a lot of that is still built off the defence, but if they can just pick up the attack up just a little bit more, I think that will
Yeah,
make the key difference. So, um, but speaking of that, and it's funny you mentioned those two teams, the XG conceded among those teams tied for best QPR and Sheffield Wednesday,
yeah,
38.9, which when you think that's, I think in what, both 31 games, I think, yeah. So basically 39 XG conceded in 31 games. That's not bad. Um,
no,
you then have Stoke 41.1, Millwall 41.6, Birmingham 43, Huddersfield 44.1, Blackburn 45.9, Swansea 50.6, Plymouth 52.1, and Rotherham 54.3. Um, and so I sort of feel for Johansson in that they're not even sort of they've conceded more than their XG conceded, which but like the amount it feels like he's done this season to even keep them
yeah.
at that. Um,
Although I don't know if I'm being hard. I was watching the highlights today, and for Somerville's first goal, I think it was when he got put through by Rutter. Somerville basically gets to the 6 yard line before he tapped. Like
yeah,
Johansson's got to come out for that. I know that's harsh. I've got Johansson. I was going to play Jeepers Keepers, didn't play it, so he's still there, and he's been playing every week because I got Dieng and he's not playing. So yeah, I might get rid of Johansson to be honest.
yeah, but I think it sort of shows with some of these teams, like the XG conceded and the goals conceded. Obviously, you would expect them to be high, but it matches up that sort of those particularly like Plymouth, Rotherham, um, Swansea. It's sort of like those are the teams that you can possibly profit from a little bit with attacking players, more so than, for example, you might look at QPR and Sheffield Wednesday being in the bottom three. I know Huddersfield obviously had a big game against Sheffield Wednesday, but I think generally speaking, it shows that you don't necessarily want to be targeting those two in particular with your attacking players. It might be sort of like, oh,
Mm.
actually, who's playing Rotherham, who's playing Plymouth, who's playing Swansea, who's potentially playing Blackburn.
Yeah,
It's still those teams I think ahead, generally speaking. Aside from some of those players that you're going to look to use anyway, your Leicesters, your Southamptons, your Leeds, that sort of thing. And then a little bit just to point to that of like the top point scorers from each of these teams, and some of them it's a little bit ropey and it sort of paints a picture. Um, Plymouth I thought was interesting. Yeah, Whitaker on 204. The next highest scorer is Ryan Hardy on 129, and then it's Barley Mumba on 119. Um, Swansea, Jamie Patterson has 129 points, and I feel like I haven't sort of like thought about him at any point this season.
I think I mentioned him a couple of months ago. I think when he scored a couple that
Hmm,
he was sort of going under the radar. Um, and their new manager is very attacking
yeah,
as he was at Notts County. So like, I don't think we'll ever go there, but he's
no,
probably a player just to keep in the back of your mind.
yeah, and then Rushworth had 126 points as well, so that was close. Blackburn, Smodix is the only player over 100 points. He has 172 points. The next highest is actually Callum Britton with 96, but it sort of shows the difference there. Um, Millwall, I said Patterson at 129 points, and I didn't know where they'd come from. Zian Fleming has 133. I don't know where they've come from either.
It must just be. bonus, I'd have thought.
Yeah,
Whenever he does anything, he gets full bonus, don't he?
yeah, it's
But
probably in little
yeah,
clusters. Norton Cuffy also has 132 for them, so he's obviously one to potentially consider there. Birmingham Bakuna has 122 points. We have sort of mentioned him a couple of times though as being someone who does sort of pick up points. Dembele actually has 116 as well. Stoke top scorer is Kiana Hoover with 135 points. The only other person over 100 points is McNally with 103. Huddersfield, we mentioned Sorba Thomas, 157, and Hellick, 147, which when you think about how many goals we've talked about them conceding, I know he's got 8 goals, but that's still an impressive amount of points to pick up. QPR, Kenneth Powell, 164 points. Ilias Chair has managed to get 133 points. Begovic also has 125. Sheffield Wednesday, no one has over 100 points. Masaba and Deschamps Bernard have 91. Ugbo would have been the third highest scorer, but obviously most of those points didn't come at Sheffield Wednesday, which means the next one would be Fameworth at 74 points. And then Rotherham, Johansson is the only one over 100 points with 107. And then it's Bramall at 85. And he's the only one over 80 points, which sort of shows all the issues for them. Which I think some of that will paint a picture, whether it's a couple of key players from teams, or whether it's sort of like, okay, these teams have actually been doing all right, whether that's sort of picking up bonus or whatever, and you can have more reason for encouragement. Any sort of other particular takeaways from that?
so much takeaways. I was just going to say, where do you lie with who you think's going to get relegated? Because for a while, it's basically been Rotherham's going down, and it's 2 from 3. But like you said, I'd say realistically, I'd probably go Millwall down. And we've got the big game this week, Stoke QPR, which is obviously massive. And do you think Stoke are in trouble? Because we've joked what the last couple of seasons Stoke might go down, but this feels like they actually might go down now, and it's not like just a wind up for Jamie and that. Are you worried for Stoke?
A little bit, just because seeing some of these performances, it's like this isn't sort of trending in the right direction. Um, and you do worry a bit. And so there is concern there because there is a slide that they need to address very quickly. So there is a little bit of concern there, I would say, yeah, particularly because you look at it at the moment and the way they're playing, obviously they have to play catch up. But you look at the way like Sheffield Wednesday and QPR are playing, and you'd be like, well, I'd probably back them to pick up more points.
Yeah. Obviously, if Stoke go and win, then it's a massive if they beat QPR. But God, I know I'll be tuning into that game. I think is it Tuesday or Wednesday? I think it's Wednesday.
I want to say
But
it's Wednesday.
yeah, we're gonna have record numbers from the Gaffr community.
Yeah,
I think
Wednesday.
watching that game. But yeah, is there anyone who you think could drop? Mill obviously lost today against Coventry.
Yeah, although I think obviously they were in a decent position and then sort of got caught. They were obviously ahead and then conceded a
Yeah,
couple. I think they'll probably be all right. I think they've got just enough about them. I do think that group is probably going to pull away, as in the 3 teams above them, and I do think Millwall will have just enough about them. Birmingham have things they need to work out, and I think it's easy to pin it on Rooney, but they got rid of Rooney early enough to theoretically sort of correct this, and it hasn't really felt like it's fixed much yet. Not saying that it won't, but it's sort of like at a certain point, more points need to come for them obviously for the likes of Millwall as well, but for Millwall, for Birmingham, for Stoke, and for Huddersfield, it is that point where it's like, okay, you need to start picking up points now.
Yeah, I agree.
But hopefully that's sort of been useful in providing some information around, who's good at what down the bottom. But yeah, so that's sort of what I just wanted to cover, because obviously there's quite a few teams down there, and I think we do sort of it's an opportunity to sort of have a look and being like, okay, what are we looking at doing in terms of, you know, looking to target teams in certain ways, or bearing certain things in mind about sort of league positions being representative or not. Um, so yeah, so that's sort of my reason for doing that. Um, so yeah, so we'll move on to your point now, which I think is more sort of specifically Gaffer related.
Yeah, so I think over the last few weeks, it's been quite obvious there's a template formed, which isn't surprising. Obviously, there's probably four really good teams, and then um, with the doubles coming up, you're obviously building towards those doubles. Um, so I thought I'd pick. I haven't done goalies, but I thought I'd pick a couple of players for defenders, midfielders, and forwards who might be able to break the template over the next, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 games. So I'll start with defenders. I'll put down Ranking Costello. He's playing, well, he played centre mid yesterday. Um, we've seen for the last season and a half just how good he is at creating things and scoring goals. Um, they do have the double Blackburn in, I think, in 33, two away games, but if one of the boosts is away days, so obviously got the chance to get points from ranking Costello. I would probably be a little bit worried he might not start both just because he's coming back from injury. Um, but I think long term, ranking Costello playing for attacking Blackburn side, um, I think could do pretty well. The second defender I've gone for is Furlong from West Brom. West Brom have been a team I've just not picked many players from all season. I'm not even sure I've had any. To be honest, they've got Cardiff in 32, Southampton at home in 33, along with Plymouth. They also double. Um, Pretty sure West Brom have the most clean sheets in the league this season. Let me just check that. Yeah, they've got it equal with Leeds at 13. Um, and Furlong does go up for like corners and things like that. So I think Furlong should definitely be on the radar. Those are my two picks. Angus, do you think they were good picks, or
Yeah, I mean, I think
anyone else you'd like throw in?
yeah, I mean, I think with those two, we've mentioned West Brom defensively previously in the tournament, sorry, in the season, and so I do think that does sort of help, sort of bearing that in mind, and the fact that their defensive sort of solidity does sort of keep on going. So I do think that is someone that you can bear in mind. Ranking Costello's obviously came back into midfield. I do, as you said, I do think that potentially helps his appeal. I'm not sure there's too many particularly sort of looking to go sort of outside the box.
She's
There's
in
not too many
Perry.
others. I want to say Perry and G, but I'm not sort of. I'm a little bit not concerned about Cardiff because they're going to have a perfectly safe season and something to
Yeah,
build on and whatever. But I'm just a little bit concerned about sort of going for them at the moment as well. Um, so there's not sort of many that I'd look at outside of that at the moment, to be honest, defensively.
yeah, that's fair enough. I'm gonna move on to midfielders. I put Brooks from Southampton. Um, I know Bournemouth, a lot of Bournemouth fans wanted to keep him, and I think the manager even wanted to keep him as well. I think it was more the fact that he Brooks wanted to go and play
Yeah,
games to get back for next season, and I think we can all agree if a fit Brooks is a Premier League player. Um, like I mentioned, he came on at half time yesterday and he contributed um, straight away. We've, like I said, he's probably above this level. He's at an interesting price where you'll probably have to take a risk of maybe losing one of the template midfielders. Um, he's 8.5, but they do double in 33. Um, West Brom away and Hull at home. Um, so yeah, I think he could be a good shout. The other one is Greenwood from Middlesbrough. Um, I noticed when I watched them last week when they were on the TV against Sunderland that he's playing up front, um, which is obviously has massive appeal. Although they don't have the double in 33, Middlesbrough, they will double in 37, and it he Middlesbrough will play two away games. So if you're looking to play away days in maybe 37, then Greenwood is definitely someone to keep an eye out, especially if he's still playing up front. They will have QPR and Birmingham away, so that although we've mentioned QPR aren't great defensively, pretty decent defensively, they're still a bottom six side who you'd expect Middlesbrough to win. I know you've been impressed with Greenwood this season, Angus.
yeah. He has his moments. I think it's it's a bit in two minds, particularly after watching that game against Sunderland, where he's clearly
Yeah,
doing well in that role, and he gives them something else with the extra sort of fluidity and the way he can alternate with sort of pizzazz and that sort of thing. But I think there's times where, as a result, it means, when it comes to sort of the efforts to sort of finish it and whatever, that you're left a little bit wanting by him. That's the one concern. But I do think
yeah,
that he's still a decent pick.
yeah. I think it's hard with Middlesbrough because I'm not sure there's a standout player for them. I think that Jones is obviously injured. I think we all want to see Force has have a run up front, but he seems reluctant to put him up front, even though going back to his Brentford days, Force has a very good strike rate up front. Um, yeah, any others, Angus? I was thinking about Rothwell from Southampton, but it's just is he going to get in the team,
I
or is
mean,
there going to be
can you not
rotation?
have him in the team after that goal, the
I
first
mean,
one?
well, the second was a good finish as well. To be fair,
Yeah, but it doesn't matter after the first goal. But I think I was sort of thinking about it. I remember him being a decent option when he was at Blackburn. So there's a
yeah,
chance if he gets a run in that he could actually be sort of a useful option. I'd probably still like to go Brooks. I mean, the pass he played through to assist the goal was really nice, and I think that's the sort of the moment that he is capable of providing that would make him interesting as well. Um,
Rothwell 6.5.
yeah, I think that's the key with him is that you're not necessarily like you said, you're not necessarily losing something from one of those sort of premium mids if you do want to hold on to them by going for Rothwell. It's sort of an extra sort of additional option. Um, so yeah, but I think he could be an interesting option.
Anyone else? Or
Um,
it's tricky, isn't it? I like the
yeah,
Coventry lads, but they don't have the double.
I think there's a couple out there that could potentially be interesting options. I mean, obviously people are going to look at Blackburn, someone like Tyrese Dolan. We've spoken numerous times in the past about Tyrese Dolan. I'm not necessarily saying that just because he scored two goals at the weekend, but I do think he's someone that could be worth a look. Although I think again it does sort of depend how you're set up and everything. One I would come back to, as in to mention again, who I've mentioned before, I actually owned is Wes Burns. He is the other player regularly in the Ipswich attack, and so I do think there's sort of an element of um, he could still be sort of viable. I mean, yeah, there were a couple of awful efforts from him at the weekend, but he was sort of involved in the attack quite a lot, and so I do think that's another sort of potential route to points, particularly as the striker spots become a little bit more, competitive. Could someone like Wes Burns be another way into Ipswich in particular for you?
Are you not worried about Sarmiento and Hutchinson over the last month? They've come in, although they've not always started, they've contributed quite a bit
Oh yeah,
recently.
yeah, yeah. That is the
Yeah,
concern, but I think it's probably Wes Burns seems like he's still going to start. He's just not necessarily going to play sort of 90s. But it
yeah.
does sort of mean that I would still sort of be looking at someone like Burns.
What about Elo's from West Brom? I know it's an out there pick, and I hadn't seen much from him, but I thought he looked really impressive in at times in the match against Ipswich at the weekend. Took his goal well after a match. Well, it was terrible defending, but
Yeah, that's,
he took the goal well.
yeah. No, I do like the look of him. It's not just that game. I think he's been good recently, and so I do think there is an element of like, could he be an option? Particularly if you're looking at West Brom, I don't think it's the worst idea to look at someone like him. He's taken his chance coming into the lineup in the last few games.
Yeah, he's got a few returns. Scored against Ipswich, scored against Blackburn, scored in the goal and assist against Aldershot in the FA Cup. Bit of a worry. He did get subbed a bit early though yesterday,
Yeah,
which you've obviously got Swift who didn't start. Dean Garner's going to be back from AFCON, so maybe it's a wait and see. But yeah, it's just someone who I hadn't really watched too much, and I can see why he's getting minutes from what I saw.
yeah, and I think that's um, the sort of big difference there. But I do think that there's a few options that if you're really wanting to move away from the template, I think in the midfield area that there are some potentially interesting ones there.
Yeah, and finally forwards, I've wrote a couple. Obviously, it's hard to move away from the ones that are selected, but I've gone Kiefer Moore. Um, for a long time throughout the season, we had Broadhead, Chaplin. I've at spells had them both, but I think just from his performance against Preston, we've seen what Moore can do. We saw it in a Cardiff team that weren't great a few years ago. Um, Scored key goals for Bournemouth as well in their promotion season. Um, I think he could be a really decent option, and if I was going for an Ipswich striker, I would definitely think about Kiefer Moore. Good price at 7.5 million. It's not, for example, if you've got Chaplin, it's not that much to find. If you got Whitaker, it's not a massive amount to find. Obviously, you run the risk with Whitaker because he's returning near enough every week. Um, and the other one I've gone for is Haji Wright. I know we've joked a few times about him on the pod, but he has been scoring quite a lot or assisting quite a lot when he's played um, this season. He's got 10 goals, 5 assists. I know sometimes he plays on the left or up front, but I think he's adapting to the league quite well. Um, and I think if you're going to break like the template, I think he's someone who it could have a massive upside when people will be maybe a bit wary to move away from Armstrong, Rutter, and Whitaker. I don't know if you want to add any more on those two, Angus. Are you thinking of either of them?
Um, I mean, you sort of look around. I think Big Kiefer has to be a consideration at the moment. I was, he struggled a little bit in terms of the service at times at the weekend, but I thought
Yeah,
when he had the opportunity, I was still sort of impressed. I was also actually really impressed with Al Hamadi when he came on as well. I thought he looked bright. He linked up a couple of times well with Kiefer Moore as well, so it'd be interesting to see. It's interesting to see they've got those other options there. Hadji Wright, I have to say, he's doing well. I I still can't get the picture of him at the World Cup barely looking like a footballer out of my head, but he's doing very well at the moment, so he has to be considered. Like simple as that, I think. But it's tough, particularly with some of those spots where it's like, okay, which one do you go with? But yeah, he's certainly a consideration.
is there anyone else you thought about? It's tricky, I think.
Yeah, I mean it gets a bit dicey, particularly looking for players with the double. I think you'd probably be looking for players who don't have the double at this point to find a
What
forward.
we've sort of mentioned him a couple of times. What about Che Adams? I know he's expensive.
I
Um,
don't like it. I think he would be the first one to
yeah,
drop out of the team. Like as
I
in
agree.
if
Yeah,
someone like Brooks comes in or whatever, it'd
comes
be
in.
Che
They'll be
Adams that
yeah.
drops out. That's my real concern with him. So that's where I'd probably look to stay away there. Um, I'd also keep an eye on Emmanuel Dennis. We talked about him before. He scored a couple of minutes after coming on at the weekend.
Great
Um,
assist by Winks.
yes, but he's talked about how low his fitness levels were when he first arrived, like how quickly he was feeling tired. So as he looks to build up, they go into a decent run, and so he's one that I'd also just keep an eye on.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Well, I hope that's helped you guys. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to you bringing them in. I won't bring them in, and you score all the points. And when I go to them, they won't return. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, uh, yeah, it's going to be interesting. But yeah, so I think the next thing for us is whether we've got sort of anything else from the game week we want to cover. Um, I'm going to start just because I thoroughly enjoyed the highlights of this game, and I have a fun fact to bring up, which is the Southampton 5 Huddersfield 3 game. Southampton scored 5 goals. No one who started for them scored more than 2 Gaffr points.
Brilliant, actually. I did message you earlier on today because I looked at the bench and I was like, Rothwell, Brooks, Sully Manor, Edozie, and Mara coming on
Yeah.
the pitch, and you're like, oh my god, yeah, that strength in depth is worrying, isn't it?
So yes, that one I did enjoy. Also, just you started thinking, oh, is Southampton's unbeaten record going to go now and everything, and then just to not only equalise but to push through. I think the resiliency there as well. I think obviously I watched the highlight show on ITV, and Russell Martin did sort of say he wasn't sort of pleased with it, but he was pleased in terms of the players having to do something a bit tougher, having to come from behind and show a bit more sort of resilience and everything a couple of times, and that was key for them to show that they can do it and everything, which I do think is probably sort of a key thing for them in that game to show, okay, yeah, like we can do it if we're not ahead, which if anything makes them even more ominous at this point. Anything from you from sort of the games this weekend?
I think I'll probably mention Sunderland, just Bellingham, Bellingham and Clark with two good goals. Patrick Roberts starting, we know how massive he can be, and yeah, I'm not sure if they're gonna get in the playoffs, Sunderland, just because they're a bit up and down. But I suppose you could say that with everyone around the playoffs. But yeah, I'm intrigued to see what Sunderland do in the next few weeks. Um, yeah, I don't think there's too much more comfortable wins for Leeds. Leeds again. Uh, Somerville looked good, didn't
Yeah.
he? It's worrying. Very, very good.
Shout out to Patrick Bamford for scoring with his arm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just looking through. Yeah, I mentioned them briefly. Ipswich, I think it was important for them to get something from that game. I thought they were the better team against West Brom. Um, I think that game exposed still, no matter how well they've done this season, they still have some very limited footballers in that team, even at this level. They've done well this year, and I'm not faulting their effort or anything, but I think it's shown that they are still a promoted team. Like, I mean, Wolfenden has moments where I'm like, how, like, as in, I mean, he couldn't have played that fellow's goal much worse. Um, Edmondson, I think I'm more reluctant to criticise him because he is a backup who is having to play, particularly with Burgess going on. Massimo Luongo is another one who puts a real shift in the middle of the park. I think it's more just his age. He doesn't have the horsepower, whatever sort of he had previously. He doesn't have the horsepower to be doing it regularly. And I kept watching him and thinking, like, you put Lewis Travis in this team, and are some of these issues they were having even happening? And so I think it's those sorts of things where it's like, I mean, Hladky on the second goal. I know he's a little bit unsighted, but it's still not great. It still feels like he should be doing better on that. And there are moments when, in terms of his shot stopping, where he does leave a little bit to be desired on corners. There are a couple of times where it's like, you're sort of coming out, getting nowhere near it, and having to be bailed out by his defenders. But I think, you could also see some of the quality at the other end. I think Kiefer Moore is a key addition. Hutchinson obviously took his goal well after coming on. I thought Broadhead played well again. Um, so I do think, obviously, I'm not ruling them out, but I think it just sort of showed part of the issue still for them, is some of these players that, while they're obviously doing a good job for them, at times they are a little bit limited. Um,
I just worry like sometimes they have to score 3 goals to win a
mm,
game, and they've done well. And obviously, I said they'd be, I think, 16th, and they're obviously going to finish in the top six. I do worry though when it gets to playoff football, if you're having to score 3 goals to win a game against the top lot. I'm not convinced they'll be able to do that, but yeah, they've done a great job. I think they're stronger than what they were at the start of the season, so they've definitely improved throughout the window. Another one is how Twin Sabi isn't getting in this team is
yeah, I know
don't
they have to
understand.
spell his starts, and sort of maybe it's ahead of the midweek game. They looked at it and were like, we can get by in this game and we'll bring him in. But I would have looked at that game and thought, nah, he needs to be in this team.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, I agree on that. Also, massive sympathy for um, Daryl DK.
yeah.
Went down, looked like his ankle, and you could see immediately he knew, and he sort of went off the pitch and was having to sit there, sort of pulled his shirt up over his head. Thought Sky Sports repeatedly showing the replays of him crying on the cards. It was a little bit like, come on now, like, give the man a little bit of a break. But yeah, I felt really sorry for him in that moment, because it was just one of those things. The way he landed as well, it was just one of those almost impact injuries or whatever that just made me feel sort of really sorry for him. Um, And just to finish this off, because I know we've got a question on it, but I'm just going to cover it now. I think people quite enjoyed the conversation about Duncan Maguire last week. We
Got
obviously
them
have had the
removed from the
resolution,
game.
um, which is that Blackburn's appeal to have him registered was rejected. I think we both feel this was absolutely the right call. It was a screw up that was entirely of Blackburn's making. Obviously, as I said last week, I feel immensely sorry for him. He has been sort of massively dicked around in this situation, and there's no way around that. But at the same time, Blackburn, not for the first time, we talked about how they did the same sort of thing with Lewis O'Brien last year. It's clearly not right there in terms of the way they're doing things. Um, you know, I think it was the tipping point. Obviously, Yondell Thomason has gone as well, and I think it was probably the tipping point for that. But yeah, I mean, you can say it's an honest mistake in terms of them pressing save on the paperwork and uploading it to drafts folder rather than submitting it. But at the same time, like, come on, you can't make sure that you've actually submitted the paperwork. Also, this only went down to the wire because of them messing around over the move in the first place. And then suddenly deciding to be back in when it looked like he'd sorted out an alternative move. The upside for him is that he still has the opportunity to go and play in MLS. That he doesn't have to sit on the sidelines for 5 months now. I think back to someone like Adrian Silva who had to do that after they missed the FIFA window when he signed for Leicester. But yeah, just feel sorry for the fans, particularly because I think a lot of them liked Thomason, and that being the tipping point for him going as well, I think is unfortunate. Um, but yeah, I mean, I feel sorry for the player. I feel sorry for the fans. But it's Blackburn again. It's sort of like you've got to ask serious questions, and I know serious questions have been asked, but you've got to ask serious questions again about sort of the running of that club.
So obviously you mentioned um, Thomason going. What's your opinion on Eustace? It feels like his stock has risen just because Birmingham has slid down the table. I'm not sure how good he is. Like I think he's a competent, I think, but I'm not sure Blackburn fans are going to be quite as excited about him as they were with Thomas. And I don't know what you think.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think his stock has gone up, like you say, from being sacked. I think it's one of those things that he's got a little bit of like credit or whatever, where because of the league position they were in, people ignoring the proximity. I think it was like 3 or 4 points to 15th
Yeah.
place when he got sacked, even though they were in sixth. Where it's like, but people just focus on they were in the playoffs when he got sacked. I don't think we know how good he is at this point. And so it'll be interesting to see. I think that there have been sort of a number of teams that have looked at him for jobs and not hired him. I think there are the players there to succeed at Blackburn. So I think, it's a decent job to go and get. Obviously, I've just raised questions about the running of the club, but in terms of the players that he's going in to work with, it's a decent job to get on that front. So I think it'll be interesting to see how they go. Like, apparently, some of what they did yesterday was sort of influenced by his ideas in terms of the way they sort of lined up and everything. So it obviously, they're not necessarily going to. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to sort of win and score plenty of goals every time. But I think it creates a little extra reason for encouragement because of that. Um, but yeah, I think that was the last thing. Just covering it off because I knew it was a question. I knew that we were sort of going to have to cover it off. Um, so we'll finish off with the questions. Thank you to everyone who sent questions in on Twitter. FPL Frog has asked, who is the Blackburn keeper? Are they a better option for away days 33 than Patterson? Are you bored of talking about Blackburn yet? I mean, I've literally just talked about Blackburn, but no, because I think they are interesting for multiple reasons. Obviously, Pears is the keeper. I was waiting briefly to see if he would stay in goal, but after saving a penalty as well, I think his spot is probably safe now. Better pick for away days in 33 than Patterson for you.
Let me just see who's Sunderland have.
Patterson has a single away at Birmingham. Pears obviously has away games against Preston and Cardiff.
I'm gonna say yes. I think you've got 2 games, haven't you? I think so.
Yeah,
Save a bit of money as well, don't you?
yeah. I think the big thing for me, particularly on away days with the goalkeeper, where you're not necessarily going to get the bonus or whatever, is just that extra fixture. It might be an extra 4 points, but that's then an extra 8 points or whatever. So I just think beyond the fact that he's just saved a penalty. Although I think watching the replay, he might have been off his line a bit early, but but he has just saved a penalty, and so you never know. You get that on away days. I mean, Patterson's obviously a good keeper against penalties, but I think it does just sort of come back for me to that extra fixture in a lot of these cases. FPL Commander said, as a Cherries fan, naturally I rate David Brooks and Kiefer Moore to do well in their loan spells. But is it too hasty to put one of them in this game week in my squad here? And is it viable game week to play the away day boost with one of them coming in, or should I wait? So in terms of Brooks, he's got Somerville, Philogene, Smodics, Dewsbury Hall, and Clark. Forwards, he's got Armstrong, Keane, and Nisbet. Well, I'm certainly going to say it doesn't sound. I'd feel better about Kiefer Moore, and looking at your squad, Kiefer Moore makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. Like
Um,
he's shown it, he's got everyone playing away. He's currently playing Dewsbury Hall, but I'm guessing he'd take him out for Kiefer Moore.
yeah,
I don't know. I think I'm going to play in 33, but how many more fixtures are we going to get? What, three or probably four, five, six? It's not a massive amount, is it?
no,
So
and then obviously you've got 37 where the big boys all play away, and
yeah.
Middlesbrough have 2 away games. Um,
Do you know what? Sometimes it's better just if you've got the team to just do it. You're not
yeah,
mucking around with transfers.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I don't hate it.
So it's not the worst idea. Obviously, you're going against the doubles, but when you've got a team all playing away, I do understand it.
Because he could play away days next in midweek, although that might be a problem playing in midweek. Maybe um, he could play away days 32, triple 30, 33, and then one of the other boosts, part of the bus or something in 37. I don't
Yeah,
hate it.
yeah. It opens up for other boosts, certainly. Um, AD Tour said, if you haven't mentioned it in this episode of the podcast yet, what do you think of the conclusion to the Duncan Maguire saga? Obviously, just covered. Nonstop FBL has asked, do we continue with the whole love-in, or was the Swansea result concerning? I mean, it was concerning, particularly, it
Yeah,
wasn't so much the result. Do you look at the stats? That's what really concerns me. Like, Hull basically weren't in the game.
yeah, it's worrying, but this is what happens when I get whole players. So yeah, I've
Yeah,
got 3 of them.
it was better. It was better when it was just me and Danny McDonald on more than one of them. Now that everyone's joined us, it's all gone to hell.
Yeah, especially when the last time I brought in Philogene, he missed a penalty, and then the week after, I think he got
Yeah.
injured. So I
Uh,
I don't have a great track up record with whole players this season.
Yeah. But it looks like Cyrus Christie is going to play. So if you want a differential, talking about sort of going against the template and everything, Cyrus Christie, there's your real sort of differential against the template because no one else is going to go with Cyrus Christie. James Wood has said the template is pretty set and pretty strong again this season. What's the best plan trying to make up 100 points on the leaders in this set of boosts? So I think that there's broadly a template. I think it's sort of from a small group, because you think some people have Clark, some people don't. Like some people have. There's a bit of a mix on sort of someone like Mavididi, Chaplin,
Pereira.
Whitaker. Um, Moore now comes into that mix, which again, maybe it's little things like that. It's like, okay, I'm going to get Kiefer Moore in. I'm going to, do you punt against one of the bigger picks? Do you be like, right, I can afford to sell whoever? Um, I decided, oh yeah, this was the week I could afford to bench Pereira. That didn't go to plan. But it's little sort of differences in there. Someone might go for like Patrick Bamford. So I think that's the first starting point, is maybe some of these slight differences. Um,
Yeah,
and I guess like there has to be an element of risk taking.
yeah,
Try and get on players before other people do.
yeah. I think um, maybe something like FPL Commander is doing. Maybe play your away days, not differently, just play your boost differently. Like he could do really well, I think. I think there might be a double later on though. I think
That it's
it's
possible.
mainly
It's possible.
it's Coventry, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a mixture of picking not massively out there picks, but like similar to what I've picked. You mentioned Bamford, sort of going for the better teams, and then maybe just if someone gets in for a 3 or 4 game spell, getting on them.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Like for example, I went before basically anyone. I got Ryan Giles last week, as in for game week 30. He got an 8 pointer. You start picking little advantages like that. You're talking about making up 100 points over this period. If you can
yeah,
pick up like 6, 7, 8 pointers just by going a week early on guys, that can add up quite quickly as well.
yeah, yeah. Like I said, mixture of that, and then maybe playing your boost slightly different,
Yeah.
similar to maybe what FPL Commander's doing. Yeah,
Yeah, I agree.
I think you can definitely do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think 100 points over that period. It's what, 7 points a week when you think about it that way. You just have to find a way to gain that.
Yeah,
Um, which can happen. It's just sort of then finding those differences. James, that's right. That done that one. Shesko Sexual has done. Apologies if this was already talked about. Couldn't listen to the last pod. But what chips and when are we playing? Um, I can't remember what we said on the last pod. We covered it in quite a lot of detail.
I think we agreed away days and triple were the best two,
Yeah.
and then in the feedback from the Gaffr guys about
Yes.
performance enhancement,
So I think
and
we didn't
you,
pod about that after I got the answer to that, did I? Because someone asked about that.
yeah,
So the extra performance points in terms of, I know it's asked about captain and vice captain, um, and bench. It basically functions the same as Goalfest. So the extra points are not doubled. So say you have a midfielder who gets a 10 pointer in terms of an assist and 4 bonus, and you captain them. So that'd be 20 points for that, and an extra 4 points for the bonus. So it'd be 24 points. And same as Goalfest, you get the bonus points on your bench when you play it as well. So it's basically Goalfest, but for bonus points.
yeah, and you do have captain and vice
Yes.
captain.
Yeah. So yes, I think it was that, or was Park the Bus, where it sort of just depends how it works for people. Um, but yeah, and then the weeks we sort of covered off quite a bit. I don't sort of want to retread old ground too much. There's a couple of doubles, and then obviously there are a few weeks. I mean, as was said about like away days, even this upcoming game week, there's some others that will fit in, but yeah, I think it's a little bit sort of repetitive there, and some of it is a little bit obvious at this point as well, I would say. Petrianen has asked your view on Eustace and Blackburn. Best players to target besides obviously Smodics, targeting away days for 33, Blackburn playing twice away. I think we've covered that quite a bit. We've literally covered thoughts on Eustace at Blackburn. I think we've mentioned the 4 different Blackburn players.
Yeah, I think we've covered it.
Yeah. So hopefully that's answered the question. If you do have a follow up, let us know. But hopefully we have answered it. Name cannot be blank. So thoughts on this team playing away days in 32 and then triple in 33 on the 3 players captain? Is it too early to use 2 valuable chips boosts? Or are these the best times to use them? If not now for away days, when are the fixtures better? Just to round off that last part in terms of when the fixtures would be better, theoretically, we've talked about 33 and 37 are 2 weeks where they are also good for away days. Away days 32, it's similar. It's all sort of away players.
Can't fault that team.
No. And in terms of then the triple, Philogene, Armstrong, and Davis, I don't think at the moment I'd be wanting to play. I'd struggle to justify a triple that didn't involve Somerville, but I guess those players do all have doubles in 33. So maybe that is the answer because I don't think Somerville can double again. So um, you might have to. So yeah, maybe that is the best answer. I certainly don't hate it. It certainly, I look at it and it's like, yeah, that all makes sense. Noah Petra has asked, how would an overhaul look for you? I often don't look at the questions before doing the pod. I wish I had at this point.
I think you just got to get everyone playing a double, I think,
Yeah,
and then um, be playing away days 33. Um, yeah, it's tricky. It wouldn't be too much different to what I'm going to have at the minute, if
no,
I'm
I
honest.
think that's the key thing there, though. If you're going to overhaul, the second question is, are you going to be playing away days 33? Because, for example, if you're not, Whitaker would make it. If you are, there's no point having Whitaker. Um, that sort of thing as well, where it's okay, do you want to maybe punt against Leicester in the short term if you're not going to be playing away days? You could do that. It's risky, but it's the whole, okay, they play Sheffield Wednesday at home and then Middlesbrough at home, and those are 2 potentially nice games for them, but they then play Leeds away. Could you theoretically punt against them for a 3-week period if you're playing away days and look to maximise it that way? But if you're not, you're gonna want that Leicester coverage, and so I think but some of them would be sort of the same. Like Armstrong's going to be there either way. Somerville's going to be there either way. Walker Peters is going to be there either way. Philogene is going to be there either way. Like that sort of thing.
I just wonder how bad your team is to want to use the overhaul.
Yeah,
I just because even if you need like a -8 or -12 over the next 2 weeks to play a boost, I'd do it that way.
yeah. Unless you've found yourself with like basically no doublers, in which case it's maybe okay. Overhaul is the quickest fix. But with the likes of Southampton, West Brom, Plymouth, Ipswich, even Hull, sort of doubling it. Sort of, I'm not sure how you would have ended up at that point to be missing
The
out.
only the only way I can think of is maybe they budget busted in 30.
Yeah,
Maybe that's the only way.
but even then, like you say, I agree. I'd probably look to take hits. But if you were looking to overhaul for whatever reason, yeah, I think it becomes quite obvious once you decide whether you're gonna um, play away days in 33 or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all the questions we've had this week. Thank you to everyone who's asked one. We will be back next week. I don't think we'll manage to do something midweek, but we will let you know on that.
Yeah, I think the information we've provided is probably it was being focused on 33 anyway,
Yeah.
so I'm not sure how much more you're gonna learn unless if someone gets injured, you'll know anyway because Angus will do the injury news and things like that.
Yes, on that, I don't think there will be injury news ahead of the midweek game week. I'm not sure how many teams will have press conferences between, sort of particularly before deadline on Tuesday. I am also going to be quite busy with work, particularly on Tuesday, so it'd be quite difficult for me to do the injury news. Like I say, if anything in particular, sort of particularly significant comes up, I'll try and share that pre-deadline. But there won't be sort of a full team news update ahead of 32. I'll try and make sure there is one ahead of 33 though, particularly with
Yeah.
the significance. Um, but yeah, so I think that's everything. So we will speak to you guys next time. Thank you for listening and goodbye.
Bye.
Unbelievable! From the very